Mrs. Delafield Wants to Marry is a lovely story about living life to the fullest. It's also a story about how not to treat your mother and her inheritance just for your sake when her happiness really should be more important. This was released in 1986, directed by George Schaefer, and stars Katharine Hepburn and Harold Gold as Margaret Delafield and Marvin Elias, Dr. Marvin Elias. And Margaret, she's been a widow for about 10 years, but after a visit to hospital and a brief stay in hospital, she falls in love with Dr. Marvin Elias. And it's a very quick romance, but they both decide that they're wanting to get married. They both know that their years are behind them. They don't know how long either of them have got left. So why delay? They're clearly in love. Let's get married. And there are several problems that other people see, but neither of them see it. The first problem is that their children, well, Margaret Delafield's children, are concerned that by their mother marrying, it's going to water down their inheritance. Because obviously, if she dies and her husband's still alive, it's possible that he's going to get the money and they're not going to get anything. And that's obviously a really selfish way of looking at it. Thinking of your inheritance rather than your mother's happiness, not a good idea. We also have the fact that they're from different religions because Mrs. Delafield is not Jewish and Marvin Elias is. And to her, it means nothing. And she gives this lovely speech about how it's all one miracle, regardless of how you package it as a religion. It's all the same thing, which is true for most religions. You're all worshipping and supporting and believing in the same concept, just dressing it up differently. And I think she gave a really inspiring speech. But there are other people who are not in favor of two people from different religions marrying, including people who can marry them. And there are various problems with churches and things not wanting this to happen. It's a roadblock that they have to try and overcome. But what's beautiful is that at no point does Margaret Delafield ever see any of this as a problem. It's just something that she has to find a solution to. It is, I'm talking mostly about Margaret Delafield, not just because I love Katharine Hepburn and can't take my eyes off of her, but also because it is very much told from her perspective. We do get, of course, Marvin Elias's views, but most of it is about how she's feeling about it and about what it means to her. And it's so uplifting and it's so inspiring. And it just goes to show that it's never too late to find happiness, but also you never know how long you've got. Bearing in mind, she'd just been in hospital, her health's not the best that it could be, she's fallen in love again. What's the point in delaying marriage? And it's interesting because I'm the kind of person who believes you should never rush into marriage. I feel like you should not, meet somebody, get engaged, and get married within 6 months. But at the same time, people can date for years and years and years, get married, and then get divorced within a year. And this film kind of goes to highlight that you never know how much time you've got left. You never know how things are going to work out. So just go for it while you still have the chance. And I think it's a beautiful message. The narrative doesn't have too much else in it. That's everything I've described. I'm obviously not going to say exactly what happens with this planned wedding or how it ends up. I'm not going to spoil the ending, but that's basically all that happens. So if you're looking for a film that's got a lot of depth to it, emotional depth it has, but in terms of a detailed narrative, not so much, then it's not going to be for you. I will admit that had it not been Katharine Hepburn, had it been an actor, I'd never heard of, somebody I don't have an emotional connection with, then I might not have liked it as much, because I do think it's definitely driven by her performance and by this character's outlook, rather than by the intricacies of the narrative development. And that's something that I think is definitely going to turn some people away from the film. Basically, it's not the most engaging if you're not a fan of any of the cast or if you're not in love with the characters. But for me, I thoroughly enjoyed Katharine Hepburn, and the scenes when she wasn't in it were still good. But for me, she was the big pull factor, and I came away from it feeling really uplifted and inspired, and want to grab life by the horns, as it were. It's somehow both an easy watch, yet a really moving watch. And usually films that move me are quite intense and quite deep. This one, it's deep in some ways, but also everything's just on the surface, laid out. This is what she wants. This is how she's going to get it. Will she get it? I won't answer that question. It's very simple yet complex, and I love that. And it just works so well in terms of, the messages and the feel of it and the emotions. Sure, the narrative itself may not be the most intricate or the most in depth, but what it offers in other ways is so rich and so enjoyable. I would be very, very happy to watch it again. It's so beautiful that a film can be such an easy, comforting watch, yet leave me with such an intense feeling. And I think that's pretty magical. If you haven't seen Mrs. Delafield Wants to Marry, then I do thoroughly recommend it.